Today we're talking about Black Widow, directed by Kate Shortland. The story was by Ned Benson and Jack Schaefer, screenplay by Eric Pearson. This of course stars Scarlett Johansson as one of the titular Black Widows, with Florence Pugh, Rachel Weisz and David Harbour, as well as Ray Winstone. I wasn't expecting to see him. But I do want to get one thing out of the way. A friend of mine referred to this basically as a side quest. You could argue filler, I suppose. And I would agree with that assessment, unfortunately. And even in its original release window, it would have probably felt a bit like that. But it would have just bridged the phases, basically, which is what it's intended to do. That's why they've had to release it, so they can actually move on and get the next slate of films out. But I think that year wait for a true big tentpole Marvel film release just hasn't done it any favours. I think we're a lot harsher on it because we've waited so long. Obviously, yes, we've had the series in between, but they're different. That's a weekly thing, and it's just catching up with certain characters, introducing new things that will move forward in the MCU. But it's not the same at all as, like I say, a major Marvel film release. So, yes, it does feel like filler. It does feel kind of like, okay, there's a bit more backstory. And okay, the backstory it gives is useful, it's good to know, and it's very interesting to see what happened in that time with Natasha. I'm not taking that away from it. But as I say, I do think it's suffered because of that release window. But it is still a Marvel film. There's great action, there's great moments, there's pretty good de-aging, of course, because that's what they're really, really good at for some reason. But I really enjoyed it for what it was. Like I say, going in knowing that it literally was just a little bit of filler, I took it as that and I enjoyed it on its own merits. And the set pieces, like I say, were great. The comedic moments were much better than I anticipated. I've not been able to really see much Florence Pugh, I think, in the world. I think the only thing I really definitely know her from is obviously Midsommar, like probably a lot of us. But I've never really seen her stretch her comic legs, if you will, in both definitions of that word. But here she's got great one-liners as well as interactions with other members of the cast, and she's great. Her comedic side is so well done. I really want to see more of this from her. I know she's got a lot more to give. Like, whether it is in the family scenes where she's giving these little glib and, you know, almost kind of sharp retorts to what's going on about the family, and then going into a heavy emotional moment, or the little one-liners that she keeps coming up with, it's all done in that really good deadpan way. And it's very difficult in some ways to sell deadpan comedy because you're being funny but also being really flat at the same time. You're not doing funny with energy. That's what David Harbour's good at, and he's really good at that here. But Florence Pugh does that understated comedy, which I think is a lot harder. It's really nice to see Rachel Weisz in something again, because I think the last thing I can definitely remember seeing her in was the Mummy series. That's a long time ago. That makes me feel old. But everyone here was doing really well with their roles. I think when you can see people are clearly having a good time, they're enjoying themselves, they're honing their craft whilst they're on the job, and stretching themselves into new ideas and new characters and new attempts at accents that don't always land. I think every member of the cast had that, unfortunately. But you can tell they're enjoying themselves, and that really means a lot to me. I get a lot more enjoyment out of films when I can see people aren't just cashing a paycheck. And I didn't feel anyone was doing that at all here. Now I'm going to get into spoiler territory, so the quick back-of-the-box blurb, like I normally do, is it's filler, but it's still an MCU film. It's great action, really funny in places, and definitely worth your time. I don't think you'll feel like you've been robbed of 2 hours and 13 minutes if you sit through the entirety of the credits, which I recommend you do. So now we're into spoiler territory. Let's talk about one of the big marketing ploys of this film, bringing the Taskmaster into the MCU. And this is a fascinating character. The idea of someone who can mimic everything you do, even just by watching you on video. They will know your entire moveset and can pretty reliably predict how you're going to fight them. Unless you use something remote, like bombs, probably, or blind them, you've got a major challenge on your hands. And we saw, obviously, the shield, we saw the claws of Black Panther, which I don't think it was intended as a tribute, but it felt like a nice one anyway. I'm taking it that way. But I do think there's going to be a group of people. I haven't looked online. I never like to do that before doing my own reviews, so I'll find out later probably. who will think that gender swapping Tony Masters to Antonia Dreykov is woke SJW feminism gone wild nonsense. I think that viewpoint is entirely 100% wrong in general, but specifically in this film because it serves the story. Tony Masters just being introduced as a guy who can do it would have just been, okay, there's a guy who can do it. Obviously or not we all, but I think a lot of us thought maybe that would be what would happen with Rachel Weisz's character. We thought maybe it would be female even then. But having it be this person, this innocent, technically, who she was willing to kill to get to Dreykov, and Natasha having to face what she's done in the past and deal with that, I think was a good move. It made the stakes more personal. This, remember, is Natasha Romanoff's, I guess, bookend in the MCU. That's what it's meant to be. Having it where the Red Room wasn't as finished as she thought, and now she's got to once again end it. Having Dreykov still alive, and having his daughter, who, again, she was willing to use as collateral damage to get to Dreykov, be actually this enemy who can fight in every fighting style that she's ever seen. I love that. I love that change. Like I say, Tony Masters, just as a guy who can do it, would have been empty to me. So if you think that it was just pandering or anything like that, you're wrong, and you need to look at your life if that's all you're taking from this this change of the character. There's so many changes to characters in the MCU. If that's the one you're picking on, this is the worst one. There is a really good reason for this, I would say. It serves the plot well. And of course, how it all ends with Valentina again appearing, and the fact that now Yelena is on the warpath to Clint Barton. This may be resolved in the Hawkeye series, it may be resolved in a future film, I don't know. I don't know what the plans are, but I love that, end. I did actually almost expect to hear the whistle from Natasha, because I still hold out some hope. I think we all do, that there was some trick on Vormir. I think I've got the right planet. I'll check. I'll correct myself below, of course, as usual. But I did hold out that hope. I was listening very hard for the whistle, and I thought I heard it just before Valentina loudly blew her nose. But I'm excited with what's going to move forward in Florence Pugh now in the MCU. I think there's a lot of potential here that has been opened up, and I know that, again, its timing wasn't great, but now we can move on to the next slate of films. We can start, now the world's starting to open up again, cautiously, optimistically, of course, but now that things are progressing, and we can deal with this horrible thing that's dogged us for over a year, we can now start to get new films in general, but new Marvel films, and again, we've still got a lot of the series to come, and I can't wait for the next phase. I know there's good things coming, and like I say, this was an enjoyable film. I didn't think it wasted my time, and I do think it sets up well for the future. So that's all I want to say about Black Widow. So until next time, as always, thank you for watching, and take care. I'm going to get into spoiler Terry. Terry? Spoiler Terry.